Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports with Frank podcast, American sports. Today are going to be the main topic of the episode, Classic Monday. We're going to be talking about the NBA, especially the NBA awards that I'm going to try to give away myself, considering the season to be done for the time being. So I figured why not just give away what I think were the most impressive performances of the season. Going to go from Coach of the Year to MVP to Sixth Man of the Year and Most Improved and all the others. A bit of news as well coming from both the NBA and the NFL. So, episode 3, the Sports with Frank podcast. This is Francesco Ricci. Here we go. What a weekend that was, man. That was great to watch actual live sports, with the Bundesliga being back. That was honestly great. I had hell of a weekend, spending every single moment I had watching sports on TV. Felt good, to be back to that classic weekend feeling. But that's not topic for today's podcast. We're gonna go over the NBA first with the season that seems to be in jeopardy now more than ever. I mean, there's different groups of teams in the NBA at the moment, with some of them that really want to go back to playing, some of them that are uncertain, and some that really think that the season should be called off as of right now. And of course, when you have three different camps, it's never easy to eventually get to a decision that that's right by everyone. So we'll see what happens. But for the time being, I figured with the uncertainty of the NBA coming back, and I'm always trying to look for the worst case scenario first, because it can only get better from there. So as of right now, in my mind, the NBA season won't start again. So what I figured to do, I'm gonna give away my season awards. So we're gonna go over all the main awards that the NBA has at the end of every season, and from a few years now, they've been happening after the playoffs. It's now been a few years that we have an event at the end of the playoffs, usually the end of June, where the awards are given away. So we will have about a month to go before the ceremony. Unlikely that would happen regardless, because the regular season, even if it were to come back, it wouldn't be done for a few months, and the playoffs probably go well into August, so it'll be quite far away. But let's start from the idea that we're not going to see any more basketball games coming from America for this season. So let's give away some awards and see if any of you has any disagreements with me. You can let me know. You have my Twitter page. You can email me at sportswfrank@gmail.com. So please email me if you have any questions that you would like me to answer during the podcast. I'm going to try and do a mailbag episode at some point in the future. But also, if you disagree with any of my picks, or if you want to have a talk about why I should pick another player, just feel free to email me there, or reach me at sports_frank on Twitter. Now let's go with the first award. It's going to be the most improved player this season. Most improved player, in my opinion, and I don't want to sound like a homer here, but it's definitely going to be Jason Tatum. This guy has stepped it up big time. Like, if you consider his role in the team the first year, so he comes in as a rookie third-round pick in the 2017 NBA draft, and at the point when he comes in, he's not starting in the team. We have Gordon Hayward came in from free agency. You got Kyrie, got traded from the Cavs, Jaylen Brown, all the former players. Like you have Marcus Smart, and so there is no space for Tatum in the team. Luckily for him, unlikely for this other player, Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward got injured in the first game after 2 minutes playing against the Cavs and the season opener for the Celtics that year, and he came in and he honestly showed up big time. Like, this guy has everything. From the first moment he came on the court, you could tell that he's a very, very well-rounded player, and physically as well, he has the proper stature for an NBA player to be successful. He's quick on his feet, he's very good driving to the basket, he's great from three, and as a rookie, he came in and made an impact right away, and that extended then in the postseason when the Celtics got to the conference finals against the Cavs as well, without Kyrie Irving, without Gordon Hayward, with the younger members of the team to kind of carrying the load. Him, Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown. And since then, it's been an improvement after improvement. Because you consider last year, his second sophomore season, he wasn't particularly great in the sense that his role in the team was kind of reduced because of Gordon Hayward coming back, Kyrie Irving came back as well. So Tatum had kind of down year last year compared to his rookie season. But this year, with no Kyrie anymore, he became probably the leader of this team in every meeting possible. This guy goes at it in clutch time. He's never like shy from the ball. He always tries to get to the basket himself. If there is a the chance to get a basket to win the game, he's gonna be the guy we go to, and that's because the Celtics kind of want to build around him, but he also has the right mentality to be a leader for this team, and you can tell by the way he plays. I mean, this guy's gone toe to toe this year. Incredible games like against the Celtics, against the Lakers, against the Clippers. Those are two teams, and you get covered by AD, you get covered by LeBron, and against the Clippers, Kawhi, Paul George. So it's not like those are weak defenders, So considering what he's taken in terms of steps towards a more of a leader role this season, and his numbers have improved as well. He improved his point per game, rebounds per game, and rebounds per game, and then also a 3% shot has gone up as well. And this is a guy that's only in third year in the league, and I believe he could become a hell of a player for a very long time. I don't think Boston has had a player of this caliber in terms of like what it means to the fans since Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce was this kind of guy that wasn't ever like a top 10 player in the NBA, which I think Jason Tatum could become real soon. But he was the heart and soul of this team, and he was the guy that you would look at when the situation got tough. So I think considering the leap that he took from last year after being kind of downgraded to more of a role player really in Brad Stevens' scheme because of Kyrie, because of Hayward, and so I think he stepped it up. He stepped in the role of the leader, and I think that should be taken into consideration. I also think that Pascal Siakam is a very good choice if anybody has that as his most improved player, but I think the guy already won it last year, and I think this year we're going to talk about Raptors real soon because I have an award going to them next, but if you look at the team and see how they've been consistent, that tells you that yes, Siakam is a very important part of that team, but at the end of the day, it's probably more of a team-friendly environment, like player-friendly environment from the team that makes him shine more than he normally would. I think he's a very good basketball player, and I think he has a very bright future ahead of him, but I don't consider him to be that focal in that team because they've shown that they can replace Kawhi, which is, in my opinion, the second best player in the NBA as of right now. And, that tells you something. So is Siakam so good, or is it the team that makes him look so good? So in my opinion, this year award most improved player is Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics. Coach of the Year award, in my opinion, goes to Nick Nurse because this guy, just let me tell you, at the beginning of the season, I had the Raptors as the number 6 seed in the East. Now, I was wrong about the Philadelphia 76ers, which I think everybody was, because this team started with different expectations, but are not doing as well as they should right now. And the Pacers as well, which, of course, they not Oladipo for the majority of the season. That's going to take a hit on them, but I thought they were going to be better than the Raptors, but, shame on me, because Nick Nurse has taken this team from a championship last year to again, a very competitive team right now in the East, which is not as good as the West, we all know, but it's definitely getting better year after year. And this team, they lost Kawhi Leonard, as I said just now, second best player in the NBA, in my opinion, just behind LeBron James. As it right now, players that are playing. I'm not considering Kevin Durant in this equation. And then they also lose, they lost Danny Green, which I know it's not one of these flashy names, but this guy has won championships in 2 different teams. And it's a guy that's reliable. You can go to him, 3-point line, you need a shot, you need a bucket, he gets it for you. And defensively as well, he's a game changer. So you lose 2 players of this caliber, and you don't really bring anyone in, because if you look at the Raptors, it's not like they had this incredible player coming in from free agency or the draft. This is a team that used what they had, used the tools that Nick Nurse has provided them, and made this team great again. And they're now currently second in the East. And in my opinion, they're better than the Bucks. I know that's it's hard to say regular season wise because the Bucks have been the best team in the NBA, and so far they haven't showed any sign of stopping at all, because they've been dominating from the beginning of the season to now. But I believe that the Toronto Raptors have like a different kind of roster. They don't have like the Giannis Antetokounmpo that the Milwaukee Bucks have, but they have a coach sitting on the bench that can be the game changer for them. Because if you look at the roster, the Bucks are probably better, but Siakam is not at Antetokounmpo level, but very close. And then Kyle Lowry, it's just been a rock for this team. This guy plays his heart out every single game, and he will go to war with you for the Raptors jersey. And Nick Nurse knew that, and he just used these kind of features that these players have, and he kind of put it together and used what he had before. Players that last year didn't get much of a focus. One of many is OJ Anunoby, which last year was kind of a bench warmer for them. Yeah, he came in, played some minutes, but he wasn't a main focus. And this year he's stepping it up, and it's like honestly coming on its own. And this guy is still young, It's not one of these old players that are just giving the last bit of playing time they have to this team. This is a guy that could be in the future of the Toronto Raptors for a long time, as is Siakam. I don't see Lowry being there for much longer because he's getting older, and I think the Raptors, if they think that they cannot win anymore, they're probably gonna let him go just out of respect for a guy that's been there for very, very many years. And for the majority of this time, he wasn't able to win, because we know that the DeRozan Lowry Raptors have always done great in the regular season and never made it up to the top of the playoffs picture because of the Cavaliers led by LeBron. But Nick Nurse comes in, wins a championship last year, and now it's on track, in my opinion, for a conference final. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they made it to the finals again. Now, would they win again? I don't know, because a player like Kawhi is the kind of player that, it gets hot when the time comes. He's the kind of player that in the finals is going to make the defensive stoppage that nobody thinks about now, but back then was what made them win the ring. So I can see Siakam stepping in that role, but I think it's too young still. But again, they got Nick Nurse, which has been showing incredible signs of like improvement even after last season. I mean, you think you cannot top it up after winning a championship, and I'm telling you, this guy is going to be a great coach in the NBA for a very long time. And in this race this year, I don't see anyone being even close. I mean, you think about the other teams, you get Budenholzer, yes, the Bucks are first, and they're doing, sort of a domination in the NBA, at least East-wise, but you got a player in Giannis Antetokounmpo that's generational talent that, will make any coach's job much easier, and the rest of the team is pretty good. Chris Middleton is an all-star, and then you have Bledsoe, you got Brook Lopez, Robin Lopez from the bench, DiVincenzo that's coming quite on its own this season. And yeah, the team is much better. I mean, if you look at the team one by one, I would take the Bucks every day. But Nick Nurse is that X factor that's going to make this team go over the top. And even if you look at last year, I mean, beginning of the season, the Raptors were not one of these teams that were considered to be one of the favorites to the title. But this guy is just implemented a style of play that make everybody shine, and that's what it is. For me, Coach of the Year is the kind of coach that can take a team and make it produce more than they usually would. So that's definitely the award for me. For Coach of the Year goes to Nick Nurse of the Toronto Raptors 100%. There is not even a question going there. Here we go, moving to award number 3. Now we're going to the 6th Man of the Year. And in my opinion, this one goes to Dennis Schroeder. This is a guy that came to OKC for a trade, including Carmelo Anthony, to Atlanta. And the only reason why this was done was to get rid of that contract that Carmelo had. Nobody in OKC, because at that point they still had Russell Westbrook, which was the point guard for the team. So Dennis Schroeder came in, and he was kind of a role player, really, coming off the bench as well, but definitely not as much of an impact as he's having this season. I just want to say, like, the OKC Thunder are one of these teams that are really surprising everyone around, because beginning of the season, you might say they were one of those teams that were going to be in the run for the number 1 pick in the draft, because you bring in Chris Paul that apparently didn't want to go there. You bring in a cast of misfits, and Paul George was traded, Russell Westbrook traded. So you look at the team, you're like, I don't see them going very far at all. If anything, I can see them tanking. Well, that didn't happen at all. The OKC Thunder have been one of the most fun to watch team in the NBA. especially the lineup that they go for at the end of games with 3 point guards. Chris Paul, SGA, and Schroeder, with Danilo Gallinari and Steven Adams kind of occupying the paint. It's a fun team to watch, let me tell you. I mean, if the season were to restart at any point, I suggest everybody who listens to this podcast just go and watch a game of the OKC Thunder, and you see, how well coached they are. And Bill Donovan was one of the other people I was thinking about for Coach of the Year for the majority of the season. As I said before, Nick Nurse is my pick, but definitely, at some point in December, January, he was definitely, a pick for Coach of the Year. Billy Donovan was. So I've been impressed by this team, but Dennis Schroeder, as a player from the bench, coming off the bench, giving the extra boost when they needed it, 3-point shots as well. And again, the way he kind of glues together with Chris Paul and SGA, it's just incredible. And I think, considering how we got to OKC, this is an incredible move from Sam Presti. Like, you got rid of that awful contract of Carmelo Anthony, and you bring in a player that's definitely helping you out right now to win games and stay relevant in the Western Conference standings. So, yeah, for Sixth Man of the Year, I'm definitely going to go for Dennis Schroeder. I mean, you always have the obvious pick that could be Lou Williams, just because this guy seems to be a Sixth Man of the Year every year, at least a candidate every year. A bit like it was with Jamal Crawford back in the days. But I think that Dennis Schroeder this year has deserved the right to be in this conversation, and in my opinion, he is the guy to go for this award. Award number 4, this is the Defensive Player of the Year. And this one was tough. I was looking at the stats, I was looking at the numbers, and there were 2 players there I was, eventually kind of having in mind, and they were Rudy Gobert and Anthony Davis. Now, Rudy Gobert is a great defender. Everybody knows that the guy is a monster in the paint, and the Utah Jazz kind of, always up there with defensive ratings because of this guy. And of course, he has to be in the conversation. But let me tell you, what Anthony Davis has done this year, in my opinion, deserves to be rewarded with the Defensive Player of the Year award, because, he steps in, he comes to a team where, defensively, they're pretty good overall, because you have Avery Bradley, you have Rondo, and LeBron itself, when he wants to defend, it's a good defender. But Anthony Davis has been incredible on both sides of the ball. Considering the role that he has in the offense, where LeBron most of the time delegates to him to go and get a bucket, the fact that he can still defend with that intensity and ability to really shut down players, and I'm not talking about middle tier players, I'm talking MVP candidates. I think he deserves to be rewarded for that, because I don't think, and people don't really realize how important he is to the defensive side of the ball, because of the impact he has on the offensive side of the ball. But let me tell you, I would take Anthony Davis with no offensive skills just for the defense. His wingspan is incredible, and he's also, for his size, is very quick. And again, as I said, I know this is a defensive award, but you have to consider the load that he has on the offensive side. Rudy Gobert doesn't have that load on the offensive side. We're talking about, the Utah Jazz. They have so many weapons. Donovan Mitchell, of course. They have Mike Conley that has been in and out this season, but nonetheless, when he's been playing, it's been definitely, an offensive outlet for them. And then you have Bogdanovic, Joe Ingles. So, there are different players that can score a bucket. On the Lakers, even though they've been super good this season, top of the Western Conference, of course, if you take out LeBron and AD, who's going to get a bucket there? So you have to consider that Anthony Davis has been doing this defensively elite performance all season long, still having insane offensive numbers. So in my opinion, the award goes to him. But I want to say something here, because I know I'm a Celtics fan, so it's very easy for me to kind of have higher opinions on certain players because they play for the Celtics. And I know a guard is rarely winning this award. I mean, if you don't count Michael Jordan, greatest player of all time, then guards don't usually go and win the Defensive Player award. It's mostly a big man award. But Marcus Smart, man, this guy should have an award just for himself, because the hustle he has on the court is incredible. This guy flies around, gets rebounds, gets deflections, steals, and he's one of the most underrated players in my opinion in the NBA. and that's probably due to the fact that offensively he's very inefficient. A lot of random three-point shots, or goes to the baskets for no reason. But at the same time, defensively, I would take like a team of 12 Marcus Smart and try and go win an NBA championship, because this guy is just so good defensively, and the heart that he puts in the game. Look, I wish I could give it to him. I know it's unrealistic. I know it's probably not gonna win it because, as I said, big man award. So Anthony Davis is my pick, but if only I could give it to Marcus Smart, I would. And next we have another one of these awards that have been, talked about quite a lot, because the Rookie of the Year race has been interesting to watch. We had at the beginning of the season, of course, Zion didn't play. For those of you who listen to this podcast and don't know who Zion is, as being considered the next LeBron for a long time. Since he was in high school, he was already followed by everyone, Instagram, YouTube, dunks left and right. And of course, when he came in the NBA, the hype was real. The guy didn't play for the first part of the season. He came back in January, and in that span, another guy shined. That was Ja Morant. Ja has been incredible. He took a team that last year was one of the worst in the NBA, and they're now the 8th seed in the West. Okay? Like, the team around him is not that great. You have Dylan Brooks, of course, and other young pieces, but I don't know. I think what he has done with his team has been incredible. For someone who came in with, not as much hype as Zion did, it was even more of a surprise, because we all knew he was good. The guy showed flashes in college to be very good, and he was compared to the next Russell Westbrook. But if you ask me, and I know it's a big thing to say, but I think he's going to be better than Russell Westbrook just because he plays much better with the team. He is very individualistic as a player, but he also knows how to pass the ball around, which Russell didn't do unless he had to average a triple-double a few years back when he won the MVP award. So Ja Morant, in my opinion, for what he has done at the beginning of the season, deserves this award much more than Zion Williamson does. Because, yeah, he came back and he was incredible. 20 points per game average for a rookie, especially after his injury. Comes back right away, is already a factor in that New Orleans offense. But I don't know. I wouldn't give it to him just because he didn't play enough. This is very similar to what happened a few years ago when Joel Embiid was a candidate, and the award ended up going to Malcolm Brogdon. And, I was 100% on board with that. We all know that Joel Embiid is a much better player than Malcolm Brogdon is, and he had a better season statistically. But you also have to consider that if you only play 30% of the season, 40% of the season, you can't expect people to not take that into consideration. And in my opinion, even though Zion is probably going to be an excellent player, and I don't know if he's going to be better than Ja Morant, but it's very likely that he will be. I don't care. At this specific point, I care about playing time and the impact he has on the team. And I think that Morant has been an incredible surprise, taking the Memphis team that has been quite bad for a few years now, after the end of the golden age, the Gasol, the Tony Allen, the Zach Randolph, Mike Conley, and they're now starting to get back to be, a player in the Western Conference. I don't think they will go far in the playoffs, but I'm telling you, I will watch very closely if there were a matchup in the playoffs between the Lakers and the Grizzlies. So, Rookie of the Year, it's Ja Morant for me. And finally, the one that people look forward the most every year, this is the MVP award. And I'm telling you, there's no other choice here but Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Bucks have been the best team in the NBA so far, in my opinion. Like, this guy has been incredible. Not only he's been polishing his already great game, but he's also trying to introduce the three-point shot to his game. And we all know how important that is in nowadays NBA. Not having a three-point shot is something that's gonna affect your game big time because of the way that defense can play around you. If Giannis manages to introduce that to his game, which has already been trying this season, I think he will be unstoppable. I think he already is a generational talent, and it's not. I think here we have to consider that it's probably not all the basketball skills that he has, but it's mostly the physical skills that he has. And the fact that, at this size, he can play point guard basically. He can play every position, but most importantly, he can defend every position. So this is the kind of player that, honestly, unless something happens and someone just comes back, I cannot see him losing any MVPs from here to the end, of his career at the Bucks, at least the high levels, just because the way he plays is just great and just so perfect for what they want to do on the court. Like, honestly, if I have to guess, I think the only player that can win another MVP before Giannis loses it would be Steph Curry, just because the way he plays is just so electric. And we all know NBA loves storylines, and this is the reason why Russell Westbrook won a few years ago, and that's the reason why James Harden won a few years ago, and probably the same reason for why Giannis won last year. So I can see the NBA, if next year Curry comes back, the Warriors have been bad all season. He comes back and he rocks, goes back to shoot like 50% from three, from incredible range. And, the comeback story after the hand injury this season, I can see them give it to Steph Curry next year. But this season, I don't think anybody can take over for Giannis. Maybe LeBron could have done it, but I don't think he's interested in that. Like, I think you can tell when he plays that he's thinking about playoff games already, and is delegating a lot to Anthony Davis. So he's been great, especially the last few weeks before the season was stopped due to coronavirus. He's been incredible. And there was that game against the Clippers when he was honestly unreal. Pick LeBron back at it. But for consistency over the season and the way he's been playing, I think Giannis is definitely the MVP for this current season of the NBA. And as I said, unless a Steph Curry return and Warriors back on top scenario next season, I don't think we're gonna have a new MVP for a few years. Those are my awards. I'm sure there are some people listening to this that are disagreeing with what I said and may think there are other better choices. And that's totally fair. I don't expect everybody to agree with what I'm saying. But as I said at the beginning, if you have anything that you would like to discuss, or if you think my pick were wrong and someone else should have won Sixth Man of the Year or any other award, just let me know at sports_Frank on Twitter. I'm always looking for inputs from you guys that you're listening, because the feedback that I'm getting, it's very important to me, and I hope you continue to do so. And let me know if anything I said you didn't agree on. I'm here to have an healthy discussion about it. Anyway, that being said, we're gonna be moving on now to a piece of news that I got the other day from Twitter, from the MyGM page on Twitter, where they were talking about a possible $900 million loss for the NBA if the playoffs were not played this season. Now, I talked about the last podcast on Monday regarding the NBA issues with the salary cap if the season did not start again. And this just, this number that came out is just kind of giving more fuel to that theory. Because if you think about it, a loss of this size is going to impact the cap 100%. Like, I can see the NBA restructuring their cap space in the next couple of years. And that's like a big time change, because if you think about this offseason was not going to be a great one in terms of free agency. But next season we will have Kawhi, we will have Giannis, like big time players. And I think they're going to be affected by this money loss that the NBA is going to suffer. And I'm telling you, if there were chances before that these players could change team and go to, there's been talks about Giannis going to the Golden State Warriors. I don't see that happening anymore, because at this point, the max that they could get from their current team would be much higher than what they could get from other teams. So before it was already unlikely, I think with this money issue they're going to have, it's going to be very hard to see superstar moving away from their current team for quite a long time. That's different for this offseason, because the big time players are not there. I think you have Andre Drummond, which has a player option with the Cavs, which is, having that player option was one of the main reasons why Detroit traded him away for nothing, basically, because they didn't want to run the risk of having to pay that player option to Andre Drummond. So that could be a possible candidate to get a payday this summer. But I think it's probably going to be smarter than that and opt in that player option, cash in, and then see next season if the cap is affected too much or not, and then decide out of that. doing his calculations to see what's best for his career. And then Brandon Ingram, another one that's a possible free agent this summer, because we know that the New Orleans Pelicans didn't give him an offer back in November, where all these rookies from 3 years ago were signing their contracts, 4 years ago, sorry. He didn't get an extension, so he's going to be a restricted free agent. That means that the Pelicans can match any offer he gets, and I think they will, considering that this guy became an All-Star this season, and it seems to be the perfect guy to play next to Zion Williamson for a few years. So I don't see him moving either, but the thing here is that it's going to be good for the Pelicans, because if the money is not there, the possible offer they're going to have to match, if they don't offer him a contract before that, which I think is unlikely, but let's say they don't, the contract match is going to be much smaller than it would have been if we didn't have this coronavirus situation. So those are two of the players, and there are other minor ones, in my opinion. DeRozan, at the end of his career, could have that big payday, to get out, to go out on a high, but I don't know. I don't think he's going to stay with the Spurs, but I don't even think he's going to get paid much, considering the issues that could come with the salary cap reduction. So we shall see. But I'm usually very excited for free agency every year. This season is going to be kind of harder than it's been other years, and I don't think we're going to see big money move for the next few years. This 100%, the next one as well, and maybe 2022 could be affected as well, because this is a big money loss for the NBA. 900 million just for not playing the playoffs. So you can imagine how much they would be affected by, as I talked about last week, the China situation, or even at a later next season. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but we don't know. So we're going into this off season kind of in the unknown to what's going to happen in the future. And I think a lot of players will try to cash in on their options, or probably going to take even less money for longer time because of the uncertainty of the future. So that's definitely going to be an issue for the summer. And another thing I think it's important to think about is the draft, because there are a lot of teams that, especially in the NBA, when it's a lot of, especially the bit better teams, so the ones that pick lower down in the draft, there is a lot of players that get picked because they have potential. They may be very good in a few years, but right now I think that most of the teams are gonna go for ready players, because as I said, there is a high chance of a smaller amount of players being moved during free agency, especially the big ones, big players. So I can see them trying to go for players that can come in and make an impact right away to help the team win, because the projects are gonna come back in a few years, in my opinion. You cannot run the risk of getting a project and not improving your team right away, because the amount of cap you have available right now is not enough. These teams have been giving away big contracts this past offseason, especially rookies like Jaylen Brown, Buddy Hield, and so those contracts will come back and haunt these teams when the salary cap decreases because of the virus situation. So I can see them not having enough space to get proper players, rotational players in, and go for rookies that have more experience right away, and they can have an impact and contribute to the cause of the team. And even as I said, this is probably going to be mostly for the later round picks, because those teams are already in a position of winning now. But I can see that happening even for top of the draft teams like the Knicks or the Cavs, because at the end of the day, you get a player right now, even a young age, that can have had he probably had a lot of experience even abroad. Examples: R.J. Hampton and LaMelo Ball, right? Those are two players that have been playing abroad in Australia for a season, and when they come in, they have that experience to play against older players, or in different kind of scenario compared to college players. Because if I get a freshman out of college, he's been playing against 4 years older opponents, but the amount of difference, even in experience between player and player, is not as big as it is when some of these players go and play abroad for a year instead of going to college. So LaMelo and RJ Hampton, I can see rise up boards because of this fact that they already have that experience. So when they come into a team, they don't need that adaptation time. They come in, they're ready to go, as soon as they step on the court the first day of training camp. So, as I said, it's probably going to be a trend mainly for better teams during the draft, but I think even at the top we can see a lot of rising due to this fact, because coming in right now it make an impact, and that's what team are going to be looking for, in my opinion, in rookies, because for the next few years there's going to be uncertainty on how the money is going to be given away to players, and I think having people on their rookie contract is going to be very good for those teams, more than it's been before. And I think if you can have a ready player on a rookie contract, you win the lottery. That's my opinion. It might be wrong, but I can see that happening already this season, this off season. Now, just a last piece of news. This is a bit farther away from the NBA. This comes from the NFL. It's been reported. I saw it reported by Ian Rappaport from NFL Network the other day, that the NFL is gonna vote on a change to the Rooney Rule. For those of you who don't know what the Rooney Rule is, this is a rule that's been implemented in 2003, and it aims to ensure that when there is a vacant position in an NFL front office or a coaching position in the NFL, people of minorities get as much opportunities as the other candidates. In the past few years, there's been less and less minority coaches and general managers in the NFL. I think we're down now to 3 coaches in the NFL that are part of a minority. Anthony Lynn with the Chargers, Mike Tomlin, coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Brian Flores, coach of the Miami Dolphins, and Ron Rivera. And there's been this idea that's been going around lately, and they're going to be voting on, of basically changing the way this rule works. And if a team were to hire a front office member or a coach that's part of a minority, they will get a better pick in the draft. This will be in the 3rd round, which in the NFL, the 3rd round, it's a pretty nice spot to get good players. So basically, the change they are voting on is, if these minorities are hired during an off season, then this team will increase its position in the draft from like lower down to farther up. Personally, I find it, I don't know. I mean, I see why they're doing this, because of course, the idea that minority are under valued in the NFL is definitely a thing. It seems over the years that there's been kind of tendency to not focus on those type of coaches, for instance, as much. I just want to, just to give an example, Marvin Lewis has been with the Bengals for years, and he may not have ever won a playoff game, but this guy's been taking a team that, it wasn't one of the best teams around, and he always made it to the playoffs. Like, with teams that were in the division, they included the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens. I don't count the Browns because, for years they've been horrible, but the Bengals have been doing well, and Marvin Lewis, minority coach, hasn't got a job yet after leaving Cincinnati 2 years ago, 2 off seasons ago, I should say. And so, just for example, comparison, then you have Jason Garrett, been coaching the Cowboys for years, and he never did anything. Yeah, the team has always been like Super Bowl ready. Every year we start the season, the Cowboys are always up there, Super Bowl contender. We're going to the Super Bowl, but that never happens because Jason Garrett's been a failure of a coach so far in terms of like winning. Of course, he has some division titles, but that's about it. A few playoff wins, yes, but that's an example of how Jason Garrett still has a job, even now being fired from the Cowboys, and he's already in the Giants coaching staff as a offensive coordinator. And Marvin Lewis, that's been doing great with a team that's always been, considered to be a 2nd, 3rd tier team in the NFL when he was there. He's been doing great and still is unemployed. So I see why they would do something like they want to with this Rooney Rule, voting in favor of this. But at the same time, I think you always have to consider like merit above all. And I'm afraid that if this became the condition, like you hire a minority coach, you get a better pick in the 3rd round. I'm afraid that there's gonna be a run to to include people of minority in your coaching staff or in your front office just for the sake of getting a better pick. So I would think, unfortunately, I cannot avoid thinking about the fact that it would become more of a, too much on the side of minorities, in the sense that they would be prioritized over others, even if their qualifications were enough. So I think that at the end of the day, you should always go for the best qualified individual, right? Chinese, African American, Mexican, doesn't matter. I mean, if you're better than someone else, you should get the job. And I don't think that incentivize teams to get someone that belongs to a minority into the team with a better draft pick would do any good to the NFL, because, as Anton Lynn said the other day, sometimes to do good you do too much and you end up doing something bad. And I think this could come back to haunt the NFL if the rule were to be approved. So we'll see what happens. I'm quite interested to see how this develops, because it's one of those topics that I'm very interested in every field. The equality between races and the equal opportunities for everyone. So I want to see how the NFL tackles this. But I'm also worried that it could kind of be a double-edged sword. So we shall see. In the coming weeks, we should get more information about this vote. Well, another great episode comes to an end. Again, I appreciate everybody getting into contact with me, giving me any sort of feedback at all, anything, even if it's just a question or something that you would like me to talk about during the podcast, or something that I said that you didn't like. Just feel free to email me at sportswfrank@gmail.com, or tweet me or send me a DM on Twitter at sports_frank. As I said before, the next episode is going to come out on Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to be reviewing the Bundesliga games. It just happened this past weekend. Give you some takes on what I think the best kind of performances were, my favorite game, players to watch from here to the end of the season. And then, of course, on Friday, we're going to come back with the preview of the weekend, football weekend, and some news, considering that today Italian football kind of restarts with group training restarting today. Hopefully we're going to get some updates from the Premier League as well, and kind of have a clearer picture to what's going on in European football in this era post-COVID-19. Until then, I'm Ben Francesco. This was the Sports with Frank podcast. I will see you all on Wednesday. Stay safe. I'll see you soon.